Hello, 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 and we are live. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Hello and welcome to everyone who has joined so far. We are so grateful to have you here today and so happy that you came for this particular webinar. We're going to take a few moments to allow more people to jump into the call. And I want to let you know that you can use the chat for reactions and comments throughout today's webinar. And you can also use the Q&A box for questions you'd like answered live, and we'll get to the audience questions at the end. Okay, so at the moment, to warm us up, I'd love you to drop in the chat which city and country you're dialing in from and what your current role is, so we know who we have in the community in the space today. And I'll do a few shout outs. I'm having a look over here in the chat to see what we can see. Anyone in the chat yet? Anyone in the chat? Oh my God. Oh, wow. It was like a build up. Okay, Alison, Jamie, Bianca, Rosanna, Laura, Alejandra, Christina, Paulina, Ashley, Carrie, Andra, Jenna, Amanda, Karen, Fabian, Soraya. Hey, welcome. So happy to see you. I see Eric as well in Berlin, Diana in Berlin as well, Mary in Sterling, Shirley in Vegas, Nicolene as well, Sori, Nina from Fairfield, Serena, Kimberly from Fort Worth, Texas, Sam from Ottawa as well, and Honora from Maine. Welcome. We are so happy to have you here and joining our community today. So if I did not get to your name, thank you all for being here. That's the most important thing we want to share with you. So let's get things started with some introductions first. Okay, I'm going to go first. I'm Garry J. Griffith. I'm a former Vice President of People, and I'm more than 2 decades into my leadership career. And spoiler alert, I've seen communications done well, bad, and catastrophically bad, okay? And today I deliver workshops and coaching with leadership and HR teams using emotions as signposts to tackle culture, team effectiveness, and strategy translation challenges. I want to say a big thank you to Team Leapson for inviting me to join today. Let's see some purple hearts in the chat, please, for Team Leapson. Let's give them a shout out. Oh, yeah, I can see them coming in. Amazing. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Ada. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Brooke. I have 2 amazing guests sharing the studio with me today, Bo Munna and Madison Butler. Welcome on board to both of you. Hi. So we'll start with Bo. Bo, how's the weather where you are? And tell us about yourself in a few sentences so our audience can get to know you.
Yeah, sure. Hi, thanks for having me. I'm in New York City. The weather is great today. It's in the low 70s. So I think we're finally over the bad, cold stretch we had here kind of earlier at the start of the year.
Evil.
Yeah, it was a rough winter in New York. I work at JustWorks. I lead the people business partner team for our revenue, marketing, and customer success orgs. Worked in the HR business partner space for over a decade. I worked at Whatnot, Reddit, Nike, and before I got into the HR space, I started my career at Target, learning the fundamentals of leading a team, running a business. I ran a couple of Target stores. So I've been on the business side, been on the HR side, and excited to be a part of the conversation today.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen a few things too, and we're going to come on to that, but thank you, Bo. Great to have you here. And Madison, welcome. How is the weather in your world right now? And tell us a bit about yourself so the audience can get to know you.
Well, normally I'm coming to you from the Boston area. Today I'm coming to you from South Africa. So it's 4:04 p.m. and it is windy and sunny and beautiful, and I have no complaints at all. I am a former chief people officer who now spends most of my time working with organizations in a fractional way, but with a real focus on the fact that work doesn't have to suck. And I fundamentally believe that if your humans break, so does everything else. And that is how I center my business, how I center my framework. And I spend a lot of time talking about big feelings and big emotions and the fact that the human experience is grossly messy.
Thank you so much, Madison. Welcome to you. And Madison, we cannot just sail past this. I understand that you're in South Africa for a particular reason. Would you like to share with our Leapson community why you were in South Africa, please?
Yes, I came to South Africa to cage dive with white sharks.
I couldn't even digest that the first time, but oh my goodness. And have you ever done it before? I'm sure is the first question anybody's going to ask.
Not with white sharks. I've open swam with other kinds of sharks previously.
Wow. Okay. Well, I hope that you stay safe and everything is fine. But kudos to you for doing something super brave, apart from working in HR, which also requires a lot of braveness. All right. So framing for today, you've met all of us, and let's highlight the fact that today we're going to be talking about the conversations HR gets called into that no certification, no role expectation, no one-to-one has ever prepared us for. I'm talking about the ones where you walk in, say something really hard to the human opposite you. You've got to be in that space with that other human, and whatever reaction that comes up, and then you've got to walk back out and deal with it, often before you even hit your lunch hour, okay? And I want to share a short story with you. It took me more than 20 years to learn this, and I'm going to share it with you in 60 seconds, okay? At the root of every leadership dysfunction is a set of emotions that need to be worked with in order to help us overcome challenges and create lasting change. And it is exactly the same with the difficult conversations that we have in HR. Because when we try to avoid, suppress, and ignore our own and other people's emotions in tough conversations, it always goes wrong. And I remember earlier in my HR career, a team of us business partners had to dissolve an entire business entity of hundreds of employees in one day. And at the start, we were briefed, and the most senior person in HR said that everybody responds differently to difficult conversations. Some people might freeze and become very silent. Some people might become extremely talkative, and some people might even laugh involuntarily. And all of these are natural human responses to a stressful event. So please do not judge each other, he said, in the face of what you need to achieve today. And I remember having so much respect for the fact that this HR leader saw how anxious we all were and created space for us as business partners to accept whatever emotions came up before we walked into some very difficult conversations in the day ahead. The truth is that these conversations don't just test your communication skills, they test your values, your relationship with the people you serve, your own emotional capacity, and that's what we're here to unpack today. There's no fluffy corporate speak, just actual frameworks and real language to help you, okay? So a little housekeeping reminder for you all. I want everyone to know that we're going to be recording all the registrants in the session today. So we're going to record the session. Feel free to share it with your team today when you get a copy to the link of this recording. All right, before we jump in, let's do a quick pulse check. Okay, we have a poll. And when it comes to delivering hard news or having a difficult conversation at work, we're curious to know, how do you typically approach it? Option 1, is it I have a clear framework and I use it every time? Option 2, I've developed some instincts, but I wing it more than I'd like to admit. Option 3, it depends entirely on the situation and the person. Or option 4, I usually dread it and put it off for as long as possible, okay? I'd like you to submit your votes and then give you a few moments to do that. All right, see Leslie is typing in the chat. Let's see, has anyone else been able to put in their result yet? We're going to give it a few more moments and see what we come up with. See what the themes in the room are about how all of you tackle tough conversations. I see the typing happening fiercely. Liana is typing at the moment. Leslie says, I have both 2 and 3. I've developed a lot of instinct over the years, but I also do admit to winging it. Thank you for your honesty. It's purely human, right? You know, sometimes we've just got to get in there and we've got to react. You know, we don't want to be reactive, but it's HR, people. Sometimes that is what is required from us. Bethany says she has a template for some situations. I see Elle is typing now. Katie says, winging it. Vivek says, I keep crucial conversations at the back of my mind. And Vicia says, I am the one, I use a blank template to show compassion. Yeah, I agree with you. Compassion is always the way to go. Yana, do we have the results? I see if do I click here for the, I have the results. Okay. So what are we trending at? 60% of you say it depends entirely on the situation and the person, and 24% of you say I developed some instincts, but I wing it more than I'd like to admit. 9% say I have a clear framework, and 7% say I usually dread it and put it off to the last moment. That's 231 votes. I'm super grateful for everybody who shared there. Thank you so much. We're really grateful. All right. Okay. So now that we have these themes, that's exactly why we're here today, to try and unpack this and figure it out. So let's move into the first theme that we want to share today. You knew about some layoffs for weeks while employees were talking about their futures. You had to put someone on a PIP when you privately thought they just needed better leadership. You had to fire someone for a company decision you didn't agree with. And if you think about it, these are all conversations that stay with you, okay? Not because they went badly, but because they were genuinely tough conversations to have. And I really want us to name them so that we can talk about how to handle them. So first question, I'm going to come to you, Bo. Let's start by naming them, not abstractly, the actual types of conversations that stay with you. What do you think the function is least prepared for, and why?
Yeah, there are two specific types of conversations that stand out to me. One probably comes as less of a surprise to everyone. That's role eliminations or layoffs. I mean, you're preparing to share news with someone that has a high probability of significantly negatively impacting their life, at least in the short term. And on top of that, these conversations are often fast and can leave people in shock. Even if there's a solid plan and then, the conversations are carried out in the most respectful or supportive of ways, it can be a traumatic experience for many who go through it. And it's been the thing that I have least enjoyed about my job. And that feeling has honestly only gotten stronger after being on the receiving end of one of those role elimination conversations, personally. And to be a bit vulnerable, like I'm the only source of income for my family of four. And it was, personally one of the hardest things that I've had to face in my life. So that's the, first one that comes to mind. And the second, may be a little bit more specific to me, maybe others are, feel it too, but the outcome of an investigation conversation, or specifically when you're closing the loop with an employee that made a complaint and the outcome of the conversation doesn't align with their expectations.
Wow.
I'd say that's probably the one that, the function has a harder time preparing for, and not necessarily because, we haven't thought through it or planned, but because it's just a harder thing to predict in terms of, what happens from that point forward. Will the employee be able to kind of move on or move forward? What impact will that experience have on their trust and relationships with you, with the greater people team, with leadership in general? Will the employee, share their experience with others? And, will that impact, what impact will that have on trust across the organization that you may not even be able to have visibility to or know about? So that's the one that stands out to me that I think there's, probably the hardest one to prepare for personally.
Yeah. Thank you, Bo. When I made my transition, I did a career change from leadership into HR like 12 years ago, something like that now. And we have to straddle this line, don't we, between supporting the business interests and also supporting the human that works for the business. And an investigation outcome and it doesn't align with the team members' expectations, it's a really difficult line to tread. It's one of the harder things that we have to do alongside layoffs. So I hear what you're saying and I've experienced that too. Just looking at the chat for a second here, Naomi says, I have templates for a bunch of things, i.e. terms, but definitely need to be responsive to the situation. And that involves some winging it sometimes. And yeah, it's the nature of what we do. We don't intentionally do it, but it's required sometime. Madison, I want to come to you now. So you've made your work facilitate the conversations that people most avoid. Can you tell us, is there one thing you think the whole industry is collectively in denial about?
That we work with humans who have like whole big lives. I think there is this really crappy idea that we're sold at the beginning of our careers, industry agnostic, that work is the thing. It is the most important thing. It is the reason I put my feet on the floor every morning. And I'm the first to tell you like that is absolutely not the case. For most people, work is the thing that sustains their universe. It is not their universe. So when something else is off somewhere in their ecosystem, so is work. But we are so stuck on the idea that performance and PIP conversations all have to be in this framework of here's what you're doing at work and here's why it's not working. But if we took time to really understand our people and what is actually going on in their lives, we actually have a much better understanding of their performance. But the human experience is deeply messy. Most of us don't like mess. It's not really natural to us to embrace mess. And so we don't have those conversations. We don't get to understand people. But the idea that your employees come to work with, regardless of what's going on, take their human sweater off at 8 a.m., put it in their little cubby, come to work, put on their smile, send their happy little slacks, and that isn't in their brain is a wild take. Because it happens at the like big level, right? Like we all went through COVID together. It was this big, massive moment that we were all collectively experiencing. And it was the first time that I think work was like, oh my God, they have other stuff. They have other stuff in their heads. Oh, who knew? But that also happens at the micro level, at the individual level, because people are going through divorce. They have sick parents. They have money issues. They are the sole provider for their family. Their brother has an addiction problem. There are all of these things that also come to work with us. And I'm not saying that we need to understand the specifics of everyone's detailed lives, but we do have to have the broad understanding that this isn't their whole life. And I don't think a lot of people are ready to have those conversations.
Yeah, thank you. It's a hard one. Bo, do you have anything to add there?
I agree entirely. I think the things that people carry with them outside of work, it's not always visible. I think the degree of comfort and sharing and being open at work, and that's okay. But I think particularly for those that don't share and talk about those aspects of their lives at work, it can add a layer of complexity or things that we simply don't know about, and handling accounting for that in the best way we can in these tough conversations is definitely tricky.
Yeah, I see a message in the chat from Soraya, and she says, the day that we work in HR and we become unfazed by having difficult conversations is the day that we need to leave, right? Because to Madison's point, it's messy. If you don't want to turn up with heart and compassion and empathy for that other person, you're in the wrong job. And yet there are HR teams out there. And I want to just pivot a little bit to trust, right? So when trust breaks down, it's usually what HR did or what didn't do or what people assumed HR was going to do. What can we do to address that? Either of you can go first.
Yeah, happy to jump in. I think where trust breaks down more often than not, it goes back to that misalignment of expectations of what employees believe or expect, from us as a people function. Speaking more generally, I think it's the people function's responsibility to, help the business make, well-informed decisions around the team. And while more often than not, I like to believe that means employees feeling confident about the work of our function, at times, even doing our jobs right means sharing news with employees that they don't agree with or don't like. And it's a reality of the work. We have to know that we made the best decision under the circumstances, even if the employee doesn't have or understand the full picture, which is certainly tough.
Yeah. Madison, thoughts from you then around the trust topic, because I think we're all aligned. Trust is the foundation for keeping these human connections nurtured and supported. What's your thoughts on trust?
So my answer is a little bit multi-layered. I think one of the bigger issues, right, is again, so much of what we understand about the world around us is learned. So you come to work with a predetermined idea of what HR looks like. Yeah. And so I think we have to address that narrative ourselves, but that also means being visible to the business, not just when things are on fire. When people get the idea that you only show up when things are bad, guess what? It's really hard to trust that meeting invite you put on my calendar, even if you put a smiley face to ensure that I am definitely not getting fired. So for me, that is one of the bigger things. It's like being visible as a function of your organization that is just not negative. You are not just here to either plan a party or put out a fire.
Mhm.
You have to actually show up as a human being. But then I think the other thing is there are so many things that happen on people teams, whether it be engagement surveys or data that comes to us that then just lives in the ether because of all of the fires.
Yeah.
If you start to collect data and you're starting to do engagement surveys and then you do nothing with that,
Mhm.
that inherently makes trust go away because they just think that you're here to do the thing and like pass the data off and you do nothing with it.
Yeah.
You have to actually do the things you're going to say that you want to do. If you want to say you're going to do this thing, you have to go and do it. And if you don't do it, you need to own that out loud with a why.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And, you talk about, the fires and the other priorities that we have. I'm just looking at this comment from Jennifer. Jennifer says that, there needs to be a balance with the level of responsiveness and involvement and staying people focused, but we also need to balance being human with the bottom line, right? Because in the end, we're just like marketing, finance, and legal. We are a business function, right? And I think there is an element of not balancing that very well, doing all the nice to do stuff, being the bad cops, but actually not demonstrating business value. And I think it has tarred us slightly with a brush, which makes us unpopular. So bigger conversation, another webinar, but just wanted to tap on that. Let's talk about this topic of recovery, right? So after the pandemic, a lot of HR teams burned out, a lot of people left the profession, and now I'm seeing more conversation around, people leaders are getting better at recovering from the stress and the pressure that they're under, not better conversations themselves. And I wonder, what does getting better in HR even look like? Madison, let's come to you first.
Number one, I don't think anyone got better at recovering. I think we were sold this like really BS idea of what recovery looks like. And it's like a spa day. It's a day of PTO. And like true burnout recovery does not look like that. So we can start there. I don't think anyone got better at that.
Right.
I think truly getting better at HR actually means meeting yourself. I think a lot of us avoid hard conversations with ourselves. And how can I start to have hard conversations with the world around me if I am not willing to have them at home in the mirror? And how can I recover? How can I recover if I don't ask myself what I need in this moment? And so for me, truly getting better at HR means becoming more vulnerable with yourself, because better HR knows themselves and their needs. Because in order for me to show up for my people, I have to show up for me first.
Wow. And that's so many cosigns there. But Bo, let's bring you in before I add my flavor on top.
Yeah, I love what Madison said. Some things I would add in addition. I think the question makes me cringe a little bit. Like when I think about, teams that are only getting better at recovering from these moments. Yeah, that's probably true for a good chunk of people teams. But I think it really has to be both, right? It has to be a balance of getting better at recovering and also getting better at actually having the conversations. Yeah. And I think the key there for me, I think most teams have, they prep, they plan, they have the conversation. What I think is a difference maker between the teams that actually get better and don't is reflection and vulnerability. I think those that take the time to debrief afterwards, talk to, within the people team, maybe within the with some of the stakeholders or business leaders or the partners that are involved in preparing for these important moments. And not just like have open, real conversations about what went well, what didn't, but actually apply learnings to the next go around for those types of conversations. I think those are the teams that actually get better, and I think that's really important.
Wow. And Madison, I felt your comment in my soul, and I'll explain a little bit for a moment. It's that, whenever I work with leaders, I always remind them that there are 3 components of leadership, right? It's leading people, it's leading business, and it's leading self. And this is the least spoken about area. I remember 3 or 4 years ago, I did a workshop for HR teams, and it was called How to Look After Yourself When Your Job is to Look After Others. And guess what? Plot twist, people. It was all about them asking themselves those questions. What do I need? What are my boundaries? How can I prepare when someone crosses my boundary? How much energy do I have to give? And how do I make sure that someone doesn't take more energy than I'm able to give at any given time? So if anyone listening takes anything away from this conversation, please remember that having hard conversations starts with you. Starts with you doing this work so that you can decide how you want to show up for yourself so that you can show up for other people. Awesome. Okay, chat question. Drop in the chat. What is one conversation you keep putting off? Please don't name any names. I want to read a few answers from the chat. So what is one conversation you're putting off? I see Leslie says 100% reflection is essential. Cosign. All right. Leadership decisions that I don't agree with are really hard for me. Thank you, Serena, for your vulnerability. Shirley says investigations, closing them out. Hard convos with my CEO and how his actions are not helpful. What else do we have? Denial of payroll increase, providing feedback to my manager. Elizabeth says investigations as well. Let's take a couple more. Megan says capacity, these people first. We do not have infinite energy, people. Kate says performance management conversations. Okay, cool. So thank you everyone for sharing those. And now we want to kind of move into this area that most HR training covers: what to document, not what to say. And there's a gap between knowing conversations need to happen and actually being able to walk in feeling that you're actually prepared for it, right? I think that's why we're all here today. And this theme is practical, that actual structures, language that you're going to use and approaches will help you to make these conversations more humane, more effective for everybody in the room. So, question for Bo, but when you think about you've had to deliver some really bad news, maybe it's a role elimination or a rejection, what does your actual preparation look like? Can you kind of like walk us through that so that the participants here, they can think about it and be like, okay, I see how Mo approaches that.
Yeah, happy to. To me, this goes back to the poll earlier, and I think it was hard for me to pick one response out of those, out of all the answers. I think I'm probably a mix of all of those, to be honest. But when I think about my approach, there are a couple of things that come to mind. A few which are probably pretty obvious, and a few that are just pretty personal to me. First, what are the things that I need to clearly communicate, the things that the person actually needs to walk away knowing and understanding. It sounds simple, but so important. Can I speak to those things confidently? Yeah. If there's a business leader, as a part of the conversation, this also includes making sure, the two of us are aligned on, what roles each of us will play in the conversation, which is so important. The next is, how do I make sure the person on the receiving end of the conversation knows my intentions or purpose? I think there's a difference between what needs to be communicated and, in terms of what they need to know and what is important for them to hear about the role you play and how you hope to, support or, place care in the approach to the conversation. Third, probably the most important thing to me, how do I want the person to feel? I think that reflecting on that question and, putting a lot of thought and care into making sure not just what I say, but how I say it, how and what I will do, is super important. And listen, I always want the person to feel respected and cared for as best possible under the circumstances, but there are different feelings that can come into play. Like maybe the purpose of the conversation is a bit more of a wake-up call for the person if they haven't, really understood or accepted feedback in a different, format or approach, previously. So thinking about what I want that person to feel is really important. And then the last thing for me is a bit of a reminder to myself, regardless of what's going on in my life or other aspects of my job, like reminding myself that, the team, the company really has trusted me with the responsibility of handling these tough moments with thought and care. I carry the weight of that, with me in these conversations. And I think it's puts me in a better position to show up really well in these tough moments. So, those are the four things that I try to remind myself of or plan for. There are moments where I have to do a bit more of winging it when it comes to things that happen in the moment. But when I have the time and space to prepare, that's how I think about preparing for these moments.
Thank you, Bo. I appreciate that. And in the theme of tough conversations, I'm going to go to the chat here for a second. Monique says CEOs and managers disagreeing, feeling you're in the middle and not knowing you need to get them aligned on decisions. Shanaz says sometimes senior managers also get upward bullying, but rarely ever acknowledged and seen as a weakness. So a very isolating situation. Sarah says, I feel like people are more angry and combative, and it's really difficult to have an adult to adult conversation. I know what that defensiveness is like. Chana says, not always do we want them to know the reason why we are saying this, because it can cause confusion if they don't understand all the moving parts. This, again, is that really thin line. Hopefully you work in a business that believes and has a value of transparency in communicating what the employees need to know in order to move forward. So Madison, I'd like to come to you now. When the person on the other side of the conversation reacts in a way that you didn't expect, a sudden flash of anger, total blocking you out in silence, they begin to cry, how do you stay in the room, and what does that look like for you in practice?
Well, so I think number one, I think the idea that we have to stay in the room is not always correct. Obviously, there are times where you do have to stay in the room, but I also draw a boundary, right? So I always tell people, especially for doing, a 2-man termination, if this gets to a point where it is no longer productive, we will end the conversation, because it is not healthy for them. It is not healthy for me. It is not healthy for my manager. When we're talking about feedback that it is not life or death, we are not saving a life, I always give people the opportunity to say, hey, I understand this is a lot. If you need to go out, take a breath, take a lap, take a walk, take a moment, and we can return to this, let's do that. Because if the goal is for people to truly hear us and understand what we're saying, they're not going to hear it through that level of emotion. And giving people the space to have that is really important. The other thing that I do preemptively is with my own teams, and I encourage my managers to do it, is have a lot of conversations with your teams about how they best receive feedback.
Yes.
So many of us think we're good communicators, but we just communicate in the way that we want to be communicated in. And everyone has their thing, how they want to receive feedback. Like me, I am not a carrot stick carrot girl. Like, just give me the direct feedback. I don't need fluff.
Yeah.
But I have to tell people that.
Yeah.
And so I do the same with my teams, with employees. Help me understand you so that when I deliver this, you really hear it. Because for me, I don't want to just talk at you. That's not fair to you. It's not fair to me. It doesn't accomplish anything. But if I can understand how you receive this in this moment best, let's do that. And same for if you need to come back to this conversation, that's okay too. Human emotion is super normal. And for the majority of people, I think you said this earlier, like you might laugh, you might cry, you might get angry, and it's a guttural response. And I want to give people the moment to work through that. So I think the idea that you have to stay in the room and like be unproductive and be angry and be yelling and be taking yelling at you is just an unfair part of HR, but that isn't always the case. It is okay to say, hey, let's return to this moment.
Yeah. I know so many leaders I've spoken to who got burned by staying too long in the room. And it was almost like, and I have to admit, no one ever told me this, but I kind of did it, that you can end the conversation if it's not productive. If someone is so distressed by this news that you've given them, there is no point sitting there with this person trying to push through it, So you don't need permission to say, hey, let me take a judgment call. The best thing for this person in front of me right now is to give them space to compose themselves, and then we can revisit it and then take it from there. But so many leaders, I didn't know I could do that. I thought I had to push it all through in the 45 minutes we had. No, everybody's different, and you don't need to stay in that situation if it's not helping the other person and it's not helping you to deliver your message. So often we're not really taught how to hold space for people, and you don't need to be a coach to know how to do that. It's as simple as preparing physically and mentally ahead of time. So for me, I always script my conversations, just like both of you, right? And I give myself this as a fallback resource. If I get into, this conversation, it gets super difficult, and then I'm a little bit overwhelmed. I have my fallback. I have my outline, and I'm like, okay, so covered this quarter, and now I'm moving into the next section. So the context of why the conversation is happening is so important. Bo just mentioned this. I've seen so many times where leaders are so uncomfortable, they dance around the beginning of the conversation, and employees sitting there thinking, what am I here for? Like, and people, oh, isn't it cruel to be direct and just say, your leader says your performance is not up to scratch and we need to talk about how you're going to improve that in the next 90 days. Silence, literally. You need to bring it in at the beginning and help that person understand clearly, okay, so this is what this conversation is going to be about. Madison, go ahead, please.
I also think that something that would help all of us is if we didn't wait for these conversations to provide feedback.
Mm-hmm.
If feedback becomes a regular muscle, it doesn't have to be this big, scary thing, right? Like, I'm a firm believer, nobody should be finding out they're getting put on a PIP the day they're getting put on a PIP.
100%.
It should not be a shock to you because you've had this conversation over and over and over and over, and something's still not moving.
Yeah.
Feedback should be muscle memory for
Yeah.
every leader. And I'm not saying it has to be every conversation, but feedback, both positive and negative, should be repetitive because people should get to fail fast.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think there's a statistic. What's the statistic? That you should give 80% positive feedback and 20% constructive feedback, because that's the balance at which it feels natural for people, not to trigger them. But if you do anything else, it just kind of feels like you're coming out of the blue with this constructive feedback. And I want to add a second step about how I prepare. For everyone listening here, I would ask yourself this question. What do I know about my behavior under pressure that might be unhelpful in this difficult conversation? Ask yourself that first. I'll give you a few examples, i.e., I ramble and overtalk to fill the silence because the silence is so uncomfortable for me. I'm just trying to fill it. I take on responsibility for other people's emotions and become overly apologetic. I become stiff and a robot-like under pressure and just try and get through it as quickly as possible. Self-reflect and ask yourself in advance, how could you compensate for any of those behaviors? In your outline that you've drawn up, if you're prone to over-talking, literally build in pauses to your outline. And it says 10-second pause. And then when you get to that part, you're like, okay. And then I want you to do this. Breathe in through your nose and then do a long exhale through your nose, because you know what makes difficult conversations really hard? Your nervous system is freaked out because you're holding your breath, which is literally what we're doing before we're chased by a saber-toothed tiger, right? But plot twist,
or a great white shark, or a great white shark.
There's no shark and no saber-toothed. Breathe, people, breathe, okay? Your nervous system needs to know that you're safe, and you can bet that if you are not breathing, calming your nervous system, that other person is feeling this from you, right? Which is not going to help either of you in this conversation. If you're prone to taking on other people's emotions, notice that you can empathize with someone else's challenge whilst not making yourself responsible for their emotions, okay? Because I know a lot of you here in this session today, you go in with a big heart into these conversations. You care about people, but you can't take on board their emotional reaction, okay? You've got to acknowledge it and empathize with them and know that this is not your choice. It's not for you to take that home with you. Madison, you want to add a point there?
Oh no, I was snapping. But I will say, I saw someone say in the chat, like management has to be involved in feedback as well. Otherwise it perpetuates the idea that we are also the bad guy. Yeah. And for the majority of teams, I have no idea what you do day to day. I don't have the capacity to keep everyone's work life in my brain. Yeah. And so I do think it's really important for managers to be involved, especially in the feedback should be muscle memory. This should be a regular conversation. So I do agree with that point.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we're going to do another poll now. We're going to head into theme 2 and 3. So a quick check. When you think about the hardest conversations in your workplace today, where does the biggest gap sit for you personally? I'm going to repeat that. When you think about the hardest conversations in your workplace today, where does the biggest gap sit for you personally? Okay, going to give you a few moments to respond there. see feverish typing in the chat there as people complete the poll. All right, how are we shaping up? Ooh. All right. Couple more moments. Oh, it's changing. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'll tell you what we have so far. At 50, it's just changed at 54%. Most of you said, I handle them, but I carried them home with me. Like I said, HR, people, big-hearted. 23%, I deliver the message, but the follow-through falls apart. 14%, I avoid them longer than I should. And 9%, I get in the room, but I'm improvising the whole time. We had 206 people respond there. Thank you, everyone else, for sharing your context in that poll. Alrighty, so let's head into the chat and just see what's happening here. Meredith says, as HR, we have to help managers learn to interact with their teams and not push the difficult situations onto the shoulders of their HR teams. Yes, like I'm sure both of you, Bo and Madison, how many times do we see leaders not taking responsibility for their own people leadership and they're just getting pushed over onto HR teams? People, we have to find a way to help the leaders to feel equipped whilst holding them accountable, okay? This is an age-old problem. I do see it less today. I see it being challenged more openly today, but 100% Meredith, I agree. Janessa says, what is a good way for a manager to let an employee know their conversations have taken a turn into a performance issue, but this is before anyone has been involved? Okay, we can take that as a question in the Q&A at the end. Don't forget, we have a Q&A section, people. Monique says, I think leadership training is very effective. Sometimes we promote, scrolled off the screen. Sometimes, I've lost it now. Sometimes we promote people. Wow. If they haven't given the tools to manage, lead others, I tend to see more disconnect with employees. Yes, I agree with you there. It's about leaders having the tools. Ashley says, I live with this nightmare as well to Nina. Nina says, I do have a hard time getting answers. Scrolled off the screen, hang on a second. From leadership teams for answers, I'm chasing answers. Thank you, Madison, for jumping in there. Chana saying, not agreeing with what the conversation was. And Chantel says, leadership telling employees not to come to HR. Wow, shocking, absolutely shocking. All right, so you've delivered the message. We're into theme 3 now. The meeting's over. The 10 minutes later, you're in the next one, okay? These conversations don't disappear. They stack, unfortunately. And at some point, the question isn't just how to handle them well. It's about how to keep consistently handling them well without it grinding you down over time. So after a genuinely hard conversation, what does the rest of the day look like for you, and what do you actually do with it? Bo, let's come to you first, please. What do you do after that tough day of stacked, difficult conversations?
Well, I wish I could say that my calendar always gives me the time and space to recharge and reset in the ways that I want to, but at a minimum, I certainly make an effort to do just that. And it's in these moments, HR can be a lonely place sometimes, right? You're having these tough conversations, and there's only a very select few people within the organization that are often, it's okay to share or kind of debrief with. But I think what's been helpful, most helpful for me is for those that I can have those types of conversations with, like being open and vulnerable about what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. It helps me be more productive, helps me recover, helps me move forward. And I also think it's contagious in a really positive way. I found the more that I've leaned in with others without, oversharing, of course, the more they have felt comfortable doing the same, when they're having, a similar type of moment or experience. And, the stronger my relationships have become as a result. So that's been a really important, effective part of how I've move on to the next thing, and recover myself.
Yeah, relationships are key. People on the call, it's always good to have allies and advocates for you in the workplace to support you when you find yourself in these moments. Madison, I want to come to you and find out what the rest of your day feels like after heavy conversations before I add my layer on top. What are your thoughts?
So for me, I definitely go pick up heavy stuff and then I go put it back down. I am really big on finding spaces where work cannot occupy my brain.
Wow, with sharks.
With sharks, with heavy weights. I think it's really easy for us to move on to mindlessness. So whether it be scrolling or shopping on Amazon or watching Netflix, but work can still occupy my brain at those times. I'm not actually thinking about other things. I'm just putting off thinking about work, which is not the same thing. And so it's really important for me to dive into things that truly pour back into me, not just because they're easy to access. And so, like Bo said, my calendar isn't always available for me to like go hit the gym right now, right? Like I'm a 2-hour gym girly. Like that's just not always available right in this moment. But I have found ways that I can, I don't want to say fully record, but ways for a micro recharge. So there are things that immediately when I do them, like it makes me feel alive. So whether it is petting my dog or going for a walk or looking at the ocean or getting a really perfect coffee from Dunkin' Donuts, like whatever the thing may be, as small as it may be, go find something that makes you feel joy, because even in tough moments, you were deserving of that.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for that. I would add on top of that, don't be afraid of silence. After difficult conversations, I like to have space to do absolutely nothing. And you'll be surprised how many people that's quite uncomfortable for them. But having space, doing nothing is a way for me to process what has happened for me throughout the day so I can let it go, right? I'm not on to the next and cramming my mind full of things. I'm like, let me give today some space and then I let it go. And then I really love your point, Madison. Go and find what brings you joy. Joy is music. Joy is dancing for me. Go and find what brings you joy. This signals to your nervous system, we're safe, we're fine, everything is okay, so that you can wake up and take on another day. All right, let's just go to the chat a second. Chana says, oh yes, for working out. Janessa says, sitting with my dunkings as we speak. LT says, before I became a digital nomad, I had a trampoline in my home office. Oh my God, jealous much. Leslie says, prior to HR, I was a criminal justice case management, but the importance of finding a sort of ritual, yes, to release these heavy moments is critical to be able to show up for the rest of the day and the staff. Wow, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing with us, Leslie. I'm really, really pleased that you did. And now this question about, is there a way to build enough distance to stay effective without becoming the type of HR leader that's just going through the motions? It feels like we could be talking about boundaries here. So thoughts from either of you?
Yeah, happy to jump in. I'll jump in first. All good. Yeah, I think this is a pretty personal question. I think people handle this in different ways. I mean, more specifically, some people may be better at showing up in these moments if they're feeling a little less, invested or emotionally connected, and others, need to feel really connected emotionally to the conversations at hand in order to show up in a way that works. I think there's a full spectrum of what that looks like. For me personally, I know I show up my best when I feel like I'm really caring and invested in the conversation and topic. And when I have found myself not feeling that way, I have felt less effective in those moments, but that's just me, right? I think that could be different for others. So I know that's a theme I want to stay close to. And if there are moments where I'm not, feeling that way, I try to unpack that a bit and get to the bottom of it and course correct.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Bo. Madison, any way to build enough distance to stay effective without just going through the motions?
So I think for me, I probably have a little bit of a different perspective, simply because I have tried really hard over the last 24 months to remind myself that work is not Madison. Work is something that I do. HR is something that I do. I am not HR, right? HR is a career path that I've chosen for myself. And so what I have chosen to anchor myself to is my deep care for people without attaching myself to the outcomes, because at the end of the day, HR is not judge and jury. Most things that I am rolling out are not things that I would have picked. And to be quite frank, I didn't get to choose.
Yeah.
And so learning to emotionally detach from the outcomes while doing what I can to care for the people who have to sit with those outcomes, whether it's a termination or performance conversation, doing as much as I can to care about them, but knowing that I can't control the outcomes because it is just simply not the power that I have in this role. And I think one of the things that has required of me is setting boundaries. And the hardest part about boundaries truly is setting them with yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you hold a boundary, or I tell Bo I have a boundary and then I hold that boundary, guess what? It's not a boundary, it's a suggestion, and no one cares about my suggestions. And that's actually the hardest part, because in HR especially, like, there's a little bit of people pleasing that goes on in this role because you want to be liked and people already don't like you. And so holding that line, I think, is incredibly hard, but it is something that has allowed me to not only like maintain my peace and livelihood, but has reminded me that like I'm also just another human dealing with outcomes that I can't control.
Yeah. Awesome. Leaps and family, we are coming to the last 10 minutes. I want to give you a reminder that you can head down to the bottom right-hand corner of your screen and add a question that you would like to have us answer live for you. We have a couple of questions left for our guest speakers, but I want to remind you that that option is down there so that we can give you as much value as possible before you leave. So a little bit of a rapid fire before we head into the last question. Bo, what would you tell someone earlier in their career about protecting themselves in this role?
Something Madison said earlier really resonated with me, and that's about making sure you're not just involved in the bad or tough conversations, that you're showing up as a true partner to the business and a wide variety of topics, including the happy ones. It's so important. So being able to celebrate the wins with the team and also being there to support through tough conversations, that balancing act is so important. And I think for those that don't stay close to that, they find themselves feeling like they are in that stereotype of like the perception that people already have of HR before they get to know the person that's in the role. So that's what comes to mind for me.
Yeah. And Madison, how about you? What would you tell someone earlier on in their career? They're a little bit green and they're like, oh, if only I knew this thing about how to protect myself in this role. What would you say?
Oh gosh, it's like I wrote a book about this. But it is really that you are the most important thing. I think there are a lot of glass balls in life and a lot of plastic balls in life, and you are a glass ball. You cannot afford to break. Everything else can drop and it will be recovered. It is incredibly hard to put yourself back together. And so I think a lot of us burn ourselves out very early in our careers, emotionally, physically, literally doing whatever we can to climb the ladder in corporate America. But like, you can't outrun corporate. It will run you over every time, and you have to be the most important thing. You have to be able to put yourself first and take time and pour into yourself, because that shows up for your people.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to come to a couple of questions here that we have here now. Let me just have a look through. So for you both, there's a question here. How do you handle a leader who undermines HR, and what do we do in general because of their lack of experience? That comes from Martha. Let's go to Bo. What would you say here? Can you see it on the screen as well?
I can see it. Sorry, trying to figure out how to.
All new tech.
After seeing it. It's certainly an unfortunate situation when you have someone that's undermining HR. I think this is a moment where we have to model the right behavior that we're hoping for our leaders to in a way that they behave with their team in terms of sharing feedback, having a conversation, bringing attention to the issue, hopefully getting to the bottom of like their intentions and their actions. Usually it's not a poor intentions thing from my experience. Usually they don't realize that the actions they're taking and the impact it's having on your ability to kind of connect and be a partner to them or to their employees. But it takes some courage, of course, but leaning in and having that conversation is the most important step from my point of view to addressing that.
Thank you, Bo. Appreciate that. There's a question for Madison here. Madison, the question is, can you give examples of types of health boundaries that would be good for HR or managers to set?
So I think something that has really helped me is putting boundaries on my time, and obviously not my working hours, but I think everyone thinks everything in HR is a fire. We don't need to be talking about this at 9 p.m. We don't need to be talking about this at Saturday at 10 a.m. This will still be here on Monday. And so that has been a big one for me, is like being really strict with my time. And even on my calendar, like it says when I'm at the gym, it says when I'm out of office. So that has been really big for me. And I think, again, something that has really helped me is allowing people to leave the room. I am not willing to get yelled at because things are tense right now. I am very specific, and like, and this, I'm fractional now, so I kind of get to say like, you don't get to talk to me like that. But even when I was still internal, that was really big for me, is as someone who is also a domestic violence survivor, I'm not going to get yelled at. It puts me in a really bad headspace, and it's just not fair. But I think a lot of HR has been kind of taught to just like take it. And that has been a boundary that I set very clear anytime I join an organization, is I'm really willing to have hard conversations, but not to the point of abuse.
Thank you, Madison, for your vulnerability there. Shirley has a question, it's a big one. How do we help rebuild trust once it's been lost? Maybe we can all try and tackle this one. Wow, where do we begin? I would say, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think for a lot of people, they want like a quick solve. They want like we snap our fingers and everything is solved. That's just not how people's nervous systems are wired. And for as long as trust is been broken, people will react in that way. They will always be expecting the other shoe to drop. And so for me, truly the way you rebuild trust is through patience and through vulnerability and through truly understanding what people need to feel like they can trust again. Not like, I think a lot of people want to put a Band-Aid on, you know, a broken leg, and you have to admit the leg is broken. You have to admit there was fault. You have to admit that something went wrong in order to actually truly begin repair.
Thank you, Madison. Bo, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I would just add, I think sometimes the HR or people function carries the weight of like fixing that, which of course we should make an effort and play a role, but the person on the receiving end needs to be open to rebuilding that trust as well. And sometimes the answer to that is yes, and sometimes the answer to that is no. And being aware and mindful of that and the steps that you take is important. I think we often look to ourselves like this is something we absolutely need to fix. And yes, we play a role in that, but others play roles in that as well, and staying close to that is important.
Yeah. Thank you. You know, there's one thing I would add here. He said, trying to find his mouse on the screen. Come on, mouse, where are you? Okay, found it. There's one thing that I would add here. It's that, you know, sometimes situations can get so fraught in organizational culture. It's good to bring in an external, someone removed from the situation, someone who can name what it is that they're seeing in the room. Because when we work in that team, when we work in that business, we all have natural biases, right? So if you are suffering from this problem where trust is really gone, I would really advise you to bring in external and have someone facilitate, and know that, as Madison said, it is not a light switch moment. There is no quick Band-Aid. You're going to have to rebuild trust over time. Now, before we wrap, 3 minutes left, I wanted to drop one thing in the chat, one thing from today that you're going to carry with you into your next hard conversation. What do we have in the chat? I'm scrolling on in now. All right. Conversation roadmap, says Elizabeth. Thank you. Andrew says, I can walk away, adjourn. Yes. Janessa says self-care. Jody says focus on building trust intentionally, even in the smallest of situations. Yes, cosign. Helen says boundaries. Thank you, Helen. Sori says taking time to decompress afterwards, healthiest thing. Your body, your nervous system, your mind will thank you. Serena says working is something I do, not what I am. Boom, mic drop. We could end just there on that one. Liana says boundaries. I need an outlet outside of work. Chris says walk away when the conversation is no longer productive. Carol says one thing for me to know is that I have to know myself and give myself grace. Wow. So powerful. Listen, everyone, I want to thank you for giving Madison, Bo, and I the gift of your time today. We do not take this for granted. Thank you for your comments or your chats or your emojis. I hope you go forward and are strong in the conversations that you need to have. Madison, how can people reach you if they want to get in contact?
I'm on the LinkedIn's. I'm Madison Butler. I have the blue hair. I am fairly easy to find, but I am also Madison Amelia B on Instagram. But that's mostly like workout stuff because I'm a personal trainer in my free time.
Awesomeness. Thank you. Grateful. Bo, how can people reach out to you if they want to find you?
LinkedIn, way to go. I'm not on the other social platforms or a very small presence otherwise. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you both for your time, team, audience. If you want to reach out to me, also you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Please connect with all of us. We would love to stay in contact. I wish you a wonderful week ahead. Take good care. Until next time. Bye-bye.